Your child is melting down over the smallest things. They can't sleep, they refuse to go to school. You notice their emotional outbursts getting worse and worse. And as a parent, you're starting to walk on eggshells because you don't know what is going to set them off next. You've tried counseling, maybe therapy sessions, even medications, and nothing is really seeming to stick. In fact, the more you try, the more you see their anxiety, the more you see their aggression start to actually get worse. I want you to know that as a parent, you are not alone. In fact, in the US, over 4.4 million children are struggling with anxiety. And here's the thing, every year, those numbers keep climbing. And unfortunately, what most parents don't realize is that their child's anxiety isn't necessarily a behavioral problem that needs to be managed or more discipline, more strictness. It can actually be a neurological problem that, when you get to the root cause, it can really be addressed at its core. So in this video, I want to dive in to help you as a parent. If you are feeling exhausted, if your children or your child is struggling with anxiety, with aggression, with behavior regulation issues, maybe you've been told, they'll grow out of it, or you've been told medication's the only solution, and it leaves you feeling a little frustrated, a little helpless. So I want to share in this video why your child's anxiety isn't necessarily a behavior problem, but it actually can be a neurological problem. When stress gets stuck in their nervous system, it can lead to things like anxiety. And I'll share too how we in our office help relieve that stuck stress with very gentle, very safe, neurologically focused chiropractic. Now, before I dive in, I do want to share a quick story of Emma because she came to see us struggling with a lot of social anxiety. Mom shared that when she was in class, she was completely withdrawn, completely silent at school. Mom said that for almost a full year, she didn't talk to friends or teachers in school. As a family back home now, she shared that she didn't really want to get together in social situations because she wasn't sure how Emma would respond. So as a result, their whole family started to be more withdrawn, more protective because they didn't want to stress their daughter out naturally. And the challenging thing was Mom shared that she felt like she should be doing so many more things, but she didn't know how to do it or when to do it. And she said, if I did try something and it didn't work, it almost left me feeling embarrassed, like it was a poor reflection of me as a parent. She said that even one point she reached out to the school district and they're like, well, maybe Emma needs noise canceling headphones. Maybe she's overwhelmed in her environment. And Mom's like, yeah, but why? What's actually going on? And as a result, she often felt this helpless feeling. So anyway, fast forward when she brought Emma into Whole Family Chiropractic, our goal was to actually get to the root of the things. So we didn't just tell her, don't worry, she'll outgrow it. We actually acknowledged the challenges. We took things seriously. And as we started working with Emma, Mom shares back when she realized things were actually working, and she's like, it actually makes me want to cry because Mom worked with Emma in her classroom, so she knew very firsthand what was going on. And Mom says, I remember the first time she talked in school. The class was thinking of silly words to say, and all of a sudden Emma goes, stinky eyeball. And the other teacher, this mom, look at each other. This other teacher's already crying. Mom starts crying. And she thought, well, maybe it's just a fluke. And then all of a sudden, all Emma's friends came around her. They're like, Emma, you have words? Can you say my name? Can you say my name? Can you say Paw Patrol? And Mom said it was like this just super emotional, super happy moment because now she could see her daughter actually getting through all this anxiety. And she said, ever since then, things haven't stopped. She started talking, and the rest is history. So let's dive into how that happened for Emma, and if this resonates, how it could happen for your child as well. So I want to share as a starting point here, why does your child's nervous system, I'm going to get my iPad up here, get stuck in anxiety mode in the first place? You see, we all have times that make us anxious, that make us nervous. Maybe it's a big sporting event. Maybe it's a big test. Maybe it's a first date, right? We all have times that our system gets revved up with stress. The thing is, it shouldn't stay there. So in our nervous system, we have these two main modes, fight, flight, and then of course rest and digest. What happens is if your child's nervous system is getting out of balance, it can start to create this fight flight response in situations where it's not needed. And you might notice your child has anxiety over a time when you say, hey, it's not that big of a deal. I was just talking to a dad the other day and he's like, yeah, we're trying to help our 10-year-old realize, like, this isn't that big of a deal. You don't need to be melting down. You don't need to be worried about it. So if you notice your kiddo having like these disproportionate responses, odds are that they're starting to get this fight flight stuck on in their nervous system. And what this does then is, imagine we have a cup of how much stress they can handle. So if their cup is only this full, it means, all right, I've got this much stress in my system. That means I have room to handle this much more. But what happens is if their nervous system is stuck in a fight-flight state, instead of only this much stress as a baseline, fight-flight starts to create this much stress as a baseline. Now their cup is already this full, so it doesn't take much to spill them over the edge. And that's where the meltdowns, the emotions, the behaviors, the worries can get really extreme for any given situation, is because there's this baseline stress happening. And that's what we look for in our office. Specifically, we're looking for a stuck stress in the nervous system called subluxation. This is a neurological pattern that happens when there's a lot of stress over time, a lot of repeated stress. We have stress, 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 and pretty soon that starts to wire into the nervous system. What it does is start to create this fight-flight response from inside the body. So it's not just about stress coming at us from the outside world. Yes, that's important. But what happens is if there's subluxation internally, now the brain starts to receive a stress response from inside the body, even if the world is perfectly calm, perfectly safe, and there shouldn't be anything to worry about. How we see this start is very often we call it the perfect storm series of stresses. Prenatal stress, birth trauma, maybe there was C-section, forceps, induction, being stuck in the birth canal. And while those interventions might be critical to get baby out safely, keep mom safe, keep baby safe, they can create a lot of stress. I'm going to go into why this is important next, but they can create a lot of stress, especially in the newborn baby's neck area. Now, if you follow that forward and there's a lot of toxins coming into their system later in life, maybe it's an environmental exposure, maybe they're getting sick all the time, so there was a lot of medications, and their nervous system starts perceiving and receiving this stress through all these sources. It starts to now get stuck in their system. So what that can look like, bring up my iPad again here, is this really important connection through the neck, as I mentioned, is actually a critical area that affects the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the major brake pedal. It activates calm, it activates groundedness, it activates healing, and it's critical for emotional regulation. So if we go back up here, whenever the fight-flight system is going, what that means is like the gas pedal stuck on. The vagus nerve, however, is the critical brake pedal to bring us out of fight-flight and start to slow things down. It allows us to sleep at night. It allows us to digest our food. If you notice your kiddo's constipated, odds are they're stuck in fight-flight. If you notice your kiddo gets sick a lot, maybe has a weak immune system, it's because fight-flight drains the nervous system, drains the immune system. So what happens, in order to come out of fight-flight, we need a really robust, really active vagus nerve. And so if we look at our brain here, and we have our brain stem and the spinal cord, all the nerves leave the brain and they go out to the different body parts, your heart, your legs. That's not a very good leg, but we'll say it's a leg. They go throughout the body, and ultimately, if we go to the very top here at the brainstem, this is where the vagus nerve comes from. And as a result, if there's any injury, if there's any intense trauma or shifting around in this neck area, it can start to affect the vagus nerve. As a result, what happens is now stress comes on in the body. And instead of being able to come down from it, it stays stuck in the body. And this is one of the most critical things we look for in our office is how are the nerves in the neck doing? Because if those are off, odds are the vagus nerve is going to be in trouble. The second piece we're looking for then, as I mentioned with subluxation, is it can create a stress response that sends stress into the brain. So let me pull up here. What we do is we have a set of neurological scans. And here what we're looking for are these white bars, as you can see here. If we see areas of red, like in this case, you see a lot in the neck, those are areas where now instead of sending calm into the brain, the body is actually sending stress into the brain. So if we see on those neurological scans a lot of areas of stuck stress, what that means is it doesn't matter how great of a parent you are. It doesn't matter how the teacher creates a perfectly calm environment in the classroom. It doesn't matter how good you are at transitioning or knowing your child's triggers and trying to keep them all at bay to keep them feeling safe. What happens is that stress can already be inside the body. It's like if you're trying to guard your home from an intruder and you put up the perfect security system, but the intruder's already inside the house, the security system doesn't matter anymore. So that's what we look for in our office, is these stuck patterns of stress. We're looking to see, is there subluxation that's feeding stress into the brain? And specifically, is there stuck stress in this area, the neck area, that's impacting the vagus nerve and your child's ability to apply the brake pedal? So if this resonates, if you feel like you've been working really hard, if you feel like, yeah, I'm trying to keep everything at bay, yet my child is still having these big emotions, big worries, things that shouldn't concern them, but they're just feeling these unfortunate anxieties, please reach out. We'd love to see if we could help your child get through things like we did with Emma and really help them not feel stuck and protected, but to feel like they can open and expand and really enjoy their childhood.